Welcome to The Price of Assumptions, a gripping story about prejudice, redemption, and the invaluable lessons we learn when we dare to look beyond stereotypes. Store manager Mr. Whitman stood at the edge of the electronics section, his sharp eyes locked onto Jamal, who had been browsing for a while. A flicker of suspicion crossed his face as he observed the young man moving from aisle to aisle. Unable to contain his growing doubts, he stepped forward. "Excuse me, young man," he called out, his voice carrying an unmistakable edge. "I've noticed you've been wandering around this section for quite some time now." Jamal turned, slightly surprised but composed. "Yeah, I'm just looking for a birthday gift for my little sister." "Why?" Mr. Whitman crossed his arms, his expression hardening. "Looking for a long time, though, aren't you? Makes me wonder, anything you're actually planning to buy? Or are you just waiting for the right moment to slip something into your bag?" Jamal's heart pounded against his ribs, but his voice remained calm. He could feel the weight of every glance in the store, the unspoken judgments pressing down on him like a heavy cloud. "Excuse me? Are you seriously accusing me of stealing?" The manager didn't back down. "I'm just saying, empty backpack, no purchases. I've seen this pattern before. Why don't we step aside and clear things up?" Jamal stood firm, his stance unwavering. "I haven't done anything wrong. If you want to check my bag, fine. But I'm not going anywhere with you." Without another word, Mr. Whitman signaled to security. Within moments, Officer Mills strode over, his presence commanding attention. "What's going on here?" he asked, glancing between the two men. Mr. Whitman pointed at Jamal. "This young man's been acting suspiciously. I think he might be trying to take something." Officer Mills turned to Jamal, his tone neutral but firm. "Son, do you mind showing me what's inside your backpack?" Jamal exhaled sharply, knowing there was no winning against assumptions like these.
"Fine.
"Go ahead." The officer unzipped the bag, rifling through its contents. Then, after a moment, he looked up. "It's empty. There's nothing in here." For a beat, silence stretched across the store. Mr. Whitman's mouth opened and closed as he fumbled for words, but before he could say anything, a deep, authoritative voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Is there a problem here?" Jamal turned just in time to see his father approaching, his posture radiating authority. Mr. Whitman straightened, a nervous edge creeping into his demeanor. "Sir, I was simply ensuring that store policies were being upheld. Your son was behaving suspiciously." Jamal's father, Richard Reynolds, billionaire entrepreneur and renowned philanthropist, fixed Mr. Whitman with a gaze so intense it made the manager visibly pale. "Suspiciously? My son came here to buy a gift for his sister, and instead, he's been treated like a criminal. Do you have any idea who I am?" Mr. Whitman swallowed hard. Recognition flickered across his face, and his previous arrogance drained away, replaced by pure unease. "Mr. Reynolds, I had no idea." "Of course you didn't," Richard interrupted, his voice like steel. "Because you didn't bother to ask. You made assumptions instead. You humiliated my son in front of an entire store based on nothing but your own prejudices. And you think that's acceptable?" Jamal stood tall beside his father, feeling an undeniable strength in his presence. But this wasn't just about him. It was about something bigger. This was about challenging a system that allowed such bias to exist in the first place. Richard's voice rang out once more. "People like you need to be held accountable. You owe my son an apology. Right now." Mr. Whitman's lips parted, but his voice was barely above a whisper. I'm sorry." Richard shook his head. Louder. "Look him in the eye and mean it." The store manager swallowed his pride and met Jamal's gaze. "I'm sorry, Jamal. I made an assumption and I was wrong." Jamal took in the moment, knowing this was about more than just words. It was about acknowledgement, about forcing change. He gave a small nod before turning toward the exit, his father walking beside him. Heads held high, they left behind a humbled manager, a silent crowd, and a powerful reminder that character isn't defined by the color of one's skin, and that assumptions have no place in justice. Thank you for listening to The Price of Assumptions. Let this story serve as a lesson for us all, to lead with kindness, to seek understanding, and to challenge prejudice whenever we see it.
Until next time.